So I think we can begin. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and I noticed that Betsy and Jane are here, and so is Karen. Was there something that you guys wanted to say?
We were just interested in the subject. So,
Good.
no.
Okay, this will be a good one, actually, because we'll be looking through some plans, so it'll be interesting. None of these plans are set in stone. These are all draft ideas that the architect is presenting to us for the first time. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda that anybody would like to add or delete? I have one. I can give an update on the Congressional-Directed Spending request.
Okay.
One or more. I've talked to our congressional staff today.
Hey.
Well, Betsy, maybe you could turn off, you can mute your, Betsy and Jane, maybe you could mute your,
Okay.
can you go? Okay. There we go.
That's why there's no light, no cars out there in the parking lot.
Somebody wants
Yeah,
to-
these are for you.
Great.
No, those are the lines for drawings.
Great. Thank you so much.
Those drawings are for you. Good job.
Well, John, you're just in time.
Yeah.
So maybe while he's getting set up, you're uncomfortable. I can give you a brief update on the Congressional-Directed Spending request. I found out about it yesterday. It's due next Friday. This is a common, yeah. Sorry, you're right. This is something I really do to annoy people. And I find it very effective at doing that. And I talked to the congressional staff for all three of our congressional delegation. We probably have less of an opportunity this year than we had last. Last year, we had chairs of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the Senate. We're from Vermont. We don't have that this year, but they encouraged us to continue the process. So what I don't know is, it's the same problem we had last year where the deadline's not going to be lined up with we don't have our next regularly scheduled select board meeting is March 13th, I believe. And it's not really appropriate for town meeting. Don't think it's appropriate for the informational meeting.
I'd say just apply and we'll give an update on Monday like we did last time.
Yeah. Okay. And it will likely be for less than we did last time. And so worth a try, and I've got all the information to be able to do it. So if I'll send around drafts of whatever I intend to submit, but to get it, it would be great, and I can't imagine we would turn it down.
I don't recall why. Did we ever get an answer as to why it was turned down?
It made it through the Senator Sanders process.
Yeah.
But it didn't make it through the committee process.
They just didn't take it up in some way, or it was competitive, or
Oh, it's definitely competitive.
Yeah.
It's competitive with other states and.
Yeah.
And this time around, the energy projects, what they're looking at are more innovative technologies and research and development rather than, concrete projects. Probably not sent to Senator Sanders' preference, but
yeah.
He only has one voice. So I think that's as much of an update as I've got. John and Andrew, are you guys ready to go?
Of course.
Well, there you go. I knew you would be.
Andrew especially.
So
Maybe
what I'm
Oh,
What
sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
hoping out of this tonight's presentation is, if there are decision points that we need to be making decisions, that's helpful.
I think we have a lot to go over, and if we can make decisions, that would be great. I think let's see how far we can get. Before we start, it might be worth. I don't know if everyone here has had the opportunity to meet Jeff Hodgson, our landscape architect. He's going to be presenting with us tonight. He and Cynthia collaborated with us over the past couple of weeks since you saw you last to develop some more in-depth site plans that work with both the site survey results and kind of the program decisions that we've come to over the past month or so.
Nice to meet you all.
So I'll just interject here for a second. Now that we've kind of dove into the site plan, there's a whole new set of constraints that we need to consider. So
Somehow I'm not surprised.
no, I think this is the last time though that we're probably likely to be, expanding this out more to then narrow it back down. But I think, I'm confident that you guys will be able to take some of these off the table.
Okay.
You historically have been able to do that pretty well.
Can
So go ahead,
you
Ed.
wait?
Yep, we can see it.
You can see the parcel. You can see the parcel viewer.
Yes,
Yep.
I can.
No, weird. It's not giving me a red line, making me. Anyways, okay. So I think this is your existing site plan, which I think we're just gonna maybe touch on a few bullet points before we start. Before we dive in, so we're going to show you some proposed site plans. I think it's important to emphasize some of the floor plans are a little bit more developed, specifically with the police station addition. We've kind of spent some time, or the police station program rather. We've really kind of narrowed in on what I think everyone concurred is the necessary program in the police station. And that seems to be kind of the linchpin that's going to then decide a lot of the rest of the program space. So you will see some site plans that include more developed floor plans related to the police station. Everything else, specifically the town hall and the post office, is still fairly generic, and we're kind of relying on the general program square footage still. We're trying to focus still on big picture, as John kind of said. This is a little bit circling back. So this conversation is mostly going to revolve around the location of the additions or new construction rather, to address the program deficiencies and how that relates to your site, rather than going more specific. That'll be kind of at the next step. So hopefully we kind of stay big picture through this conversation.
Andrew, for Betsy, Jane, and Karen's benefit, can I explain the decision about the processing? What do we call it? The detainee processing?
Sally Port.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what a Sally Port is. So one of the things that I can't say that we don't decide anything, but one of the things that we have consensus on within the committee is that in order to process somebody who gets arrested, it needs to be in an enclosed space. That's both for the to keep the detainee detained and also to take it out of the public view. Which is particularly important considering that, there are children going to the library and whatnot. So that decision of what and where a place to pull a car into to take a detainee out and process them effectively into a holding cell is dictating a lot of what our site plan is about. Is that a fair description, Andrew?
Yep. And I think we can, as we look at the options, that'll become more apparent in terms of how that program gets broken out a little bit. So okay. I think that's a good summary. So before we dive into that, what you're looking at right now is your existing site plan. And Jeff, do you have any kind of bullet points you want to just touch on that you kind of went into some of our background charrettes in-house?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a surprise that it's actually two different parcels. And, Andrew can kind of explain what he found out about that. I think, what struck me was there's not very much pedestrian circulation between the two buildings, except out near the street, the sidewalk that joins them. So we're hoping that, maybe there's a way through this project to
6:30. So I think we can begin. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and I noticed that Betsy and Jane are here. And so is Karen. Was there something that you guys wanted to say?
we were just interested in the subject.
Oh,
So,
good.
no,
Okay. This will be a good one, actually, because we'll be looking through some plans, so it'll be interesting. None of these plans are set in stone. These are all draft ideas that the architect is presenting to us for the first time. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda that anybody would like to add or delete? I have one. I can give an update on the Congressional-Directed Spending request. One or more. I've talked to our congressional staff today.
hey,
Well, Betsy, maybe you could turn off, you can mute your, Betsy and Jane, maybe you could mute your,
okay.
can you go? Okay. There we go.
That's why there's no light, no cars out there in the parking lot. Yeah, these are for you.
Great.
No, those are the lines.
Great. Thank you so much.
Those drawings are for you.
There's that. Hey, Jeff.
Well, John, you're just in time.
Yeah.
So maybe while he's getting set up, you're uncomfortable. I can give you a brief update on the Congressional-Directed Spending request. I found out about it yesterday. It's due next Friday. This is a common, yeah. Sorry, you're right. This is something I really do to annoy people. And I find it very effective at doing that. And I talked to the congressional staff for all three of our congressional delegation. We probably have less of an opportunity this year than we had last. Last year, we had chairs of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the Senate. We're from Vermont. We don't have that this year, but they encouraged us to continue the process. So what I don't know is, it's the same problem we had last year where the deadline's not going to be lined up with we don't have our next regular scheduled select board meeting is March 13th, I believe. And it's not really appropriate for town meeting. Don't think it's appropriate for the informational meeting.
I'd say just apply and we'll give an update on Monday like we did last time.
Yeah. Okay. And it will likely be for less than we did last time. So worth a try, and I've got all the information to be able to do it. So if I'll send around drafts of whatever I intend to submit. But to get it, it would be great, and I can't imagine we would turn it down.
I don't recall why, did we ever get an answer as to why it was turned down?
It made it through the Senator Sanders process.
Yeah.
But it didn't make it through the committee process.
They just didn't take it up in some way, or it was competitive, or?
Oh, it's definitely competitive.
Yeah.
It's competitive with, other states and.
Yeah.
And this time around, the energy projects, what they're looking at are more innovative technologies and research and development rather than, concrete projects. Probably not sent to Senator Sanders' preference, but,
yeah.
He only has one voice. So I think that's as much of an update as I've got. John and Andrew, are you guys ready to go?
Of course,
Well, there you go. I knew you would be.
Andrew especially.
Maybe
So
before-
what I'm
sorry, go ahead.
hoping out of this tonight's presentation is, if there are decision points that we need to be making decisions, that's helpful.
I think we have a lot to go over, and if we can make decisions, that would be great. I think let's see how far we can get. Before we start, it might be worth, I don't know if everyone here has had the opportunity to meet Jeff Hodgson, our landscape architect. He's going to be presenting with us tonight. He and Cynthia collaborated with us over the past couple of weeks since you saw you last to develop some more in-depth site plans that work with both the site survey results and kind of the program decisions that we've come to over the past month or so.
Nice to meet you all.
So I'll just interject here for a second. Now that we've kind of dove into the site plan, there's a whole new set of constraints that we need to consider. So
Somehow I'm not surprised.
no, I think this is the last time though that we're probably likely to be, expanding this out more to then narrow it back down. But I think, I'm confident that you guys will be able to take some of these off the table.
Okay.
You historically have been able to do that pretty well.
Can
So go ahead,
you
Ed.
wait?
Yep, we can see it.
You can see the parcel. You can see the parcel viewer.
Yes, I
Yep.
can.
No, weird. It's not giving me a red line, making me. Anyways, okay. So I think this is your existing site plan, which I think we're just gonna maybe touch on a few bullet points before we start. Before we dive in, so we're going to show you some proposed site plans. I think it's important to emphasize some of the floor plans are a little bit more developed, specifically with the police station addition. We've kind of spent some time, or the police station program rather. We've really kind of narrowed in on what I think everyone concurred is the necessary program in the police station. And that seems to be kind of the linchpin that's going to then decide a lot of the rest of the program space. So you will see some site plans that include more developed floor plans related to the police station. Everything else, specifically the town hall and the post office, is still fairly generic, and we're kind of relying on the general program square footage still. We're trying to focus still on big picture, as John kind of said. This is a little bit circling back. So this conversation is mostly going to revolve around the location of the additions or new construction, rather, to address the program deficiencies and how that relates to your site, rather than going more specific. That'll be kind of at the next step. So hopefully we kind of stay big picture through this conversation.
Andrew, for Betsy, Jane, and Karen's benefit, can I explain the decision about the processing? What do we call it? The detainee processing?
Sally Port.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what a Sally Port is. So one of the things that I can't say that we don't decide anything, but one of the things that we have consensus on within the committee is that in order to process somebody who gets arrested, it needs to be in an enclosed space. That's both for the to keep the detainee detained and also to take it out of the public view. Which is particularly important considering that, there are children going to the library and whatnot. So that decision of what and where a place to pull a car into to take a detainee out and process them effectively into a holding cell is dictating a lot of what our site plan is about. Is that a fair description, Andrew?
Yep. And I think we can, as we look at the options, that'll become more apparent in terms of how that program gets broken out a little bit. So okay. I think that's a good summary. So before we dive into that, what you're looking at right now is your existing site plan. And Jeff, do you have any kind of bullet points you want to just touch on that you kind of went into some of our background charrettes in-house?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a surprise that it's actually two different parcels. And Andrew can kind of explain what he found out about that. I think, what struck me was there's not very much pedestrian circulation between the two buildings, except out near the street, the sidewalk that joins them. So we're hoping that, maybe there's a way through this project to make them more cohesive. And also the existing parking lot, while it takes up a very large area, it's not very efficiently laid out. So there's a lot of circulation and not a lot of parking. So I think we can maybe improve upon that.
One thing that we did find pretty quickly from the site survey and diving a little bit more specifically is that based on the current zoning regulations, the town hall parcel is actually in non-compliance to the existing standards. So based on your district, which is residential commercial, you're allowed 40% of developed impervious land. And the town hall parcel is somewhere around 67%. It doesn't, so I had an initial conversation with Tyler, and once we are done here, that one of our next steps will be to talk with him a little bit more in depth about the direction that seems to be where we're going and begin coordinate around some of the zoning requirements. But that's going to be a recurring theme that you see come up throughout this conversation.
Two things to note is the zoning ordinance is currently being rewritten right now. It's gone through the planning commission process, and it's headed towards the select board for a review as well. And one of the issues is certainly going to be site coverage. I think the current draft is 50% now. The existing is 40%. I think the current draft is 50%. And there's some discussion about, particularly for things like affordable housing or, housing development, there might be some advantages of doing more lot coverage rather than less. So that's a possibility, and that's in play. Another thing that's in play is we have a complete streets plan for this street, the Bridge Street, and we have a sidewalk designed, at least conceptually designed, for all along the east side of Bridge Street, going from Esplanade all the way up to the railroad track and beyond. So that is a possibility of connecting the sites as well.
That's great, because that was one of the things that struck me was, that there's not really a way for pedestrians to travel the east side. So that's great.
So the other thing to note is that, as we mentioned, there's two parcels here.
Mhm.
So the library parcel, the current lot coverage there is just under 30%,
Oh, so.
and you're allowed 40.
Okay.
So raising the limits to 50% for this district would help, would allow you to develop more of the library, a significant more piece, in addition to what's there. Doesn't change the existing site at all, because you're going to be limited to the existing amount of lot coverage. So the existing is at between 65 and 66%. So we're going to be limited to how much you have now. And we'll show you some options here. Some of them are close. You'll see that it'll be fairly easy to kind of get them down to that existing amount. But that might make a difference on the library lot as to how many parking spots you might end up with, for example.
Well, and Amy and Lori are our representatives from the library trustees. I'm sure they'll be intensely interested. And we'll be looking to the library trustees of how they feel about those things as well.
Exactly.
Quick question, was there any consideration to if the lot merged, what would the coverage look like at that point?
If there was a single lot,
Yeah.
it would be at about 57.8%,
Okay.
which would still be in excess of not only the 40, but also the 50.
Okay.
So,
And then that also triggers some other requirements that could be challenging, not impossible, but it would require a PUD, public unit development. No,
Okay.
planned unit.
plan unit. Thank you. I was like, that's not right. So why don't we dive into some of the options? So you're going to see a number of them. Option A's, there are going to be 3 of these, are related to the addition that we've been kind of demonstrating could be done to the north of the building. And we're going to go A1 through A3. A1 starting off with the bare minimum and kind of expanding off of that theme. we're going to throw a lot at you. So I suppose we could probably touch on kind of immediate questions, but then it might be a good idea just to not go too far into the weeds on any single option, just keep moving through all the options, and then we can circle back so that everyone kind of understands the.
Do you know how many parking spaces we currently have?
Yes, so the number, hold on. I'll bring that other file back that I just kind of quickly hid. So existing is 66.
Okay, and
there is a question also, just as a side note, that this is a question that Tyler and I are started to talk about, and he's going to look into it a little bit more in terms of your maximum and minimum parking spot requirements, based off of the total number of existing program spaces that are in this area, so that we can address that if we want to.
Okay.
So A1 is the bare minimum. It provides your processing program for the police station, shown in blue, on grade, just to the north of the building. It essentially, the Sally port is right here. You have some minor storage, your evidence room directly adjacent to the processing and holding cell. The evidence room being adjacent to that is fairly important, just because of the I'm going to get the term wrong on this, but essentially it's the amount of time that any one single person holds on to essentially evidence, is preferably the shortest amount possible. And then just east of that is a common stair that serves the police station. And then the rest of the police services are on the north side of the existing town hall building, on the half story above grade where it currently is. Only it is expanded into the current area where the zoning administrators are, and goes all the way up onto the second floor. We did lay this out. So on the half story, the entry is off of that center vestibule of the town hall, and then your kind of main office spaces and patrol room are down there, and then your secondary program spaces like your locker room. Actually, the patrol is here. I would have to look at the notes for.
That's like the chief and the sergeant are down.
Yeah, chief, sergeant,
Oh,
and
yes,
yeah. And then the multi-purpose room shown here is your common conference room that is used by the police station for training, as well as other town office meetings or the general public if is a reserve system.
is that essentially the same conference room that we have?
This one right here? No, it's smaller. The big one. So on this option, the entire town offices stays on the lower level where it is, and then what you've lost on the ground level from the zoning is made up on the second floor, and then the select board meeting room here on the right essentially mirrors the general space that you have now. And then the post office stays where it is. Being the bare minimum as far as an addition, this layout really doesn't allow for any additional tenant space. So essentially from
meaning no historical society or senior center, is that right? Okay.
We might be able to find room for a single office. Right now, the square foot numbers make it pretty tight. So we could dive into that a little bit more, but this would be pushing any tenant for sure.
So to be clear, we're in the third floor now, right?
Right.
So where is that in?
So we are sitting where the police station is shown on the plan right now.
Okay.
And that purple meeting room are those offices behind the screen.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, your Jeff Ford is right here. John Helmelgarn is right there. So this concept, it preserves a fairly similar curb cut that gets shifted a little bit to where it is now, and that Sally port is kind of right off the main entrance as you come in. And then I guess that's kind of a summary from our program locations. Jeff, is there anything that you want to highlight
Yeah, so, in every scheme, we're also trying to look at access, ADA access into the library. So on this one, we're showing a ramp coming from both the street side and the parking lot side. There's quite a bit of grade change up to that entrance. So we're trying to accommodate that. We're also creating kind of an at-grade crossing from the town hall and the police station, kind of like a speed table, so that people would cross directly north between the two, and the sidewalk would be flush, and the cars, would go up and over kind of a speed table. So, and then we've turned the parking between the two buildings. Instead of going north-south, it's going east-west.
Okay, and how many parking spaces does this configuration have?
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Has 74. So we're actually gaining spaces because we've pushed back towards the east property line and kind of into the hillside and put a retaining wall back there. You can kind of see on the air photo below how the existing parking is laid out. So we're just pushing it closer to the property line.
Which-
So,
One other thing that we have to remember and think about as we're looking at these options is if we're building anything that's in the floodplain or filling in any of the floodplain, we need to provide compensatory storage
On site?
on the site. So it means you have to dig so here where we're putting the parking lot maybe closer to the property line. If you're digging that out where it's a little bit of a berm now, that's actually providing additional volume for floodwaters to fill in. So if we've got small amounts of compensatory storage needed, it's not going to be very difficult. I mean, you can imagine just dropping the entire parking lot 6 inches is going to get you a fair amount.
so just to remind everyone, the red is roughly the floodplain, not exact, or but that's kind of the area that John is talking about.
So note that on the south side of the building, it's almost all floodplain there. And and again, at the end of last meeting, you asked us to look at what it might mean to put the addition over there. And we've done that. So, but in this case, there's very little of that addition is going to be in the floodplain, and it's going to be almost no compensatory storage necessary.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got like 5 or 6 variables going tonight.
Yeah, you said it was going to be fun.
It is fun. This is great. This is great stuff.
So a couple other just general numbers about this. So currently, as it's shown, this option is approximately 2% over the allowed library parcel development, and then approximately 3% over the allowed town hall development. And so both within a fairly reasonable percentage in our mind that we can make that work, especially considering based on what Jeff said as well, we're showing more parking spaces. So
yeah, and we developed these concepts before we were aware of the 2 parcels and the lot coverage issue. So in any of these, we would probably have to go back and, if we need to meet 40 or 50%, kind of trim them back. So
the other conversation, this is a worthwhile thing to note for all the options. One of the things I talked with Tyler, your zoning administrator, about is because the town hall parcel is currently in non-compliance, you say you don't have to reduce it back to the 40. You can't make it worse. But he also mentioned that, and he's going to have to, this is something that we'll definitely discuss as we move forward. He would also prefer, not to necessarily speak for him, but more than likely we would be looking at having to work within the existing footprint of developed land rather than, say, utilize untouched greenery. So that could be a problem if we look to develop, even if we were to make up any footprint that we build into by reducing developed portions back here that are currently paved, that may be a challenge that we have to overcome. So that's going to be a variable that we have to address as well.
I'm assuming there's an opportunity for a variance of some sort.
Yeah, so where, if we needed to get a variance, is that possible? Did you talk to Tyler about that, or how do we go about doing that?
I think we're gonna the next set after this meeting, based on feedback that we get from these options, we're gonna try to refine a little bit, and then having a more in-depth conversation with him so you can look at something, because right now we haven't shown him anything hardline. It's a little bit generic, you know, and we don't necessarily want him. We don't want to present something as without you having seen it as saying this is what we want to do. And
So there's also the political aspect of this, of you don't want to make it too easy for the town to get a variance. The town shouldn't be any easier for the town to get a variance than any other developer or property owner in town. And so it can be a very sticky situation.
My understanding with the variance is, I think they go to the select board for a variance. And there usually has to be like an obstruction of some sort, or a very physical reason why you need that variance.
Well, we got lots of that.
We do, but it could be a lot more difficult if your option 4, if you prefer option 2, but option 4 shows you accomplishing the same program at a similar cost without doing that. It could become more difficult.
So, you know, clearly we need local permits. What other, do we have any, we must need a stormwater permit, I would think.
We will need a stormwater permit. We talked to Kevin about that. He was not overly concerned at this point about that. You know, we do in the upper corner of the site there. I don't know if you can show, you know, that's the low spot. And there's some space there for treatment. You're treating your stormwater now. And so he felt that this was something that we could accomplish. There are options out there.
Yeah, and I know that that corner there, I guess, is on the eastern corner. Right now we do, and I know Pete put some more drainage along Bridge Street recently, but there is still water that drains from the parking lot pretty much all back towards that corner. There's a swale back there you guys probably saw.
Right.
Yeah, we have to clean that out every now and again because of the water that gets back into there. But you guys, I'm sure you guys have just noticed that.
We have, yes. And so, I mean, so stormwater, it will be an issue, and I figured by the end we'll be using almost this entire site, but I think we all could have predicted that when we got started. So now, as we reduce the lot coverage here to comply, that's just going to create more open space that we could probably end up with space for stormwater treatment. So,
and I believe when we did the walkthrough, we found some of that drainage. I think some of the drainage comes all the way from the library over to that far corner. And we discovered that, it probably could be done more effectively.
Yes, there are drains on the back of the library that go all the way back to the back portion of that property. Some
Hey, Lori,
footing drains.
some of those are plugged, aren't they? Maybe.
Yeah, Pete put them in a long time ago. So Pete might have a better sense of where they are and how they're working.
yeah, but if we have to, we'll put new ones in. We'll
Yeah.
do
I mean,
Yeah.
if anything, we're going to be improving these.
Yes, it will be working when you finish the project.
Yeah, there we go.
So, okay.
So you guys, you'll have a copy of this. This is probably a little bit hard to read depending on how you're looking at this. But you'll have a copy of this afterwards to review. So what are the downsides to this option? Everything in red here kind of summarizes it. This option does not have dedicated entrances for the police, for your program, specifically the police station. We've heard that is an issue. Right now you have overlapping circulation where people coming into the town hall building, into the central lobby, sometimes end up in Linda's office. And although this couldn't be improved visual cue that, hey, this is the police station, it's still a fairly similar overlap to the circulation path that people currently take. It has a sally port that is not isolated. It's front and center. I think Christine raised that question at the end of last meeting, kind of saying, is there a way to design this so that that sally port is more isolated and out of the site and not necessarily kind of in your principal view line from the streetscape. Some of the other ones will become more apparent, and it's the bare minimum. It's you guys don't have room for tenants besides the post office, if that is a concern or not. So
I'm assuming that you have square footages for each of the different colored areas.
yeah. So this is approximately a 1,700 square foot addition, and that includes the stairwell. Oh, and then, sorry. And the other thing too is the police station is not only not a dedicated entrance, but it's on an above grade level. So it may not necessarily be the easiest thing to access for people from the general public. So taking those notes, we moved on to option A2, which is loading. There it is. And A2 has a larger addition built in the same direction. And this addition has a dedicated on-grade entrance for the police station. And then once you're within that vestibule area, the police station can operate completely independently of the rest of the space on this site. You have a waiting room, you have your sergeant in chief, you have a small interview room, a public restroom, you have your sally port processing, holding cell and evidence, and then you have an internal stair that goes up, including and providing something like a Lula, limited use elevator that can serve that half story. And currently where the zoning administrator is and the rest of the police station, you could have your locker spaces, your showers, your patrol offices, your armory and storage. And then we've kind of wedged in this little kitchenette that could be accessed from either side, keeping the door on the police side as like a keyed door that can only be accessed by police officers. That way you have a common kitchenette that can be used by everybody, which Jeff, I think, was saying is an obvious program space that doesn't necessarily need to be dedicated to just the police station. And then you have the town offices where they currently are. You do have to have some space pushed to the second floor, but then this opens up the opportunity to have more meeting space, more tenant space on the second floor. You could even do a second story addition above the police station for an additional tenant or meeting hall or something. Post office stays where it is.
And the second floor could be done in the future.
Could be done. We could design it so that it's a structure that could support a floor down the road.
Okay.
And similar to the previous option, this is built in a relatively non-impactful location as far as floodplain concerned. You don't have to do a ton of compensatory storage. And I think those are the highlights from us.
Yep.
Jeff.
You have one less parking space. In the
Yeah.
future.
Yep, 73 versus 74. This one moves the curb cut and the entry drive further north, but it also moves most of the parking to the rear of the site. So you get a better relationship between the two buildings, I think. They're closer together. There's room for kind of a, entry plaza for both buildings. I think it works pretty well as far as concealing parking behind buildings. Right now, there's kind of a wide gulf between the two buildings of parking. So,
would there be like a crosswalk between the two, or?
Yeah. I forgot to sketch that in this scheme, but we could totally do that. Yep.
in front of the library on the, I mean, if we assume that north is the top of the page, on the east side of the library, is that gray area, are those parking spaces or what are those?
Nope, that's a directly to the right of the library. That's that kind of entry plaza. We're showing a seat wall and, kind of some pavement and then also some pavement down near where it meets the sidewalk. So the street sidewalk.
And then most people would enter the building from the rear parking lot.
Yes, if they're coming by car. Yep.
Depends on how much pedestrian traffic you encourage from the village.
Yeah, we want more of that, that's true. And, okay, and something, down the road that we can think about. The portico is quite nice, but nobody uses it. It would be nice if people, if we encourage people to use it for pedestrians. But that's okay.
Remind me what the gray space is
Yeah.
on the third floor. I'm forgetting what gray.
Oh,
is.
that's prime circulation space or general overhead space. So whether it's public restrooms
Okay.
that are outside of the town office restrooms, and then just this is the stairwell kind of vestibule area. And we can start refining it, but this is just kind of held back. There's probably more efficient ways to expand purple or green
Mhm.
and do away with it. But
Okay.
Okay, and so the upper right-hand corner of this, the top floor on the town center building, be like, the assistant administrator or somebody like that?
yeah, I think the way that we were visualizing this would probably work out is Linda's office and Kevin's office stay down here so that you have the most public facing functions staying as low as possible. And then your additional office spaces get Josh and
Yeah.
who's your I'm forgetting Martha. No, Martha's a receptionist.
Connie.
Connie, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so not
The
terribly
town
dissimilar.
clerk and the planning office, which get the most, I think, walk-in traffic
Yeah.
would be on this floor in this.
That makes sense.
The this similarly is the library parcel is about currently shown about 3% over the allowable 40%, and then the town hall is about 3.3%. So similarly, not untenable to work with.
But similar percentages means that there's a lot more space on the town
True.
hall parcel that needs to be reduced just because it's bigger. Yeah. And again, Andrew, if you zoom out, it might be good to kind of highlight where the dividing line is between the library parcel.
So there's a little white line
Oh, so,
right
okay.
here that's
We're
partially
using
hidden.
some of the library property for parking that would benefit the library.
It seems like it doesn't seem like it's an untenable situation without resolution. In that I suspect the library tenants park on that, in that lot, or the
They do.
library.
Library staff does park there sometimes, but this would be really helpful for all the people who come and unload and are doing events up in the community room and the library. Because right now, they tend to have to walk across the parking lot to take their birthday party gear or their speakers or whatever they're doing in the library.
They're cellos.
So
Yeah, cellos, yes, musical instruments, yes.
when we're looking at we might need to reduce this by 3.5 percentage points.
Yep.
Is there an idea of what 1 percentage point is in size? Is that
Well, I would look at the
parking
number
lot?
of square feet.
So
I'm just wondering,
3.3% on the town hall is about 2,500 square feet.
Okay, so how much would that, what would that?
A parking spot that's 10 by 20 is 200 square feet, plus another 10 by 10 for that piece of the
Yeah.
drive that's in front of it, so maybe 300. So, you
That's
could be
like-
losing, 5 to
Yeah.
10 parking spots, or you start to reduce Yeah, I'm looking at this plan right now where those trees are in front of the police station. If the gray wasn't hardscape, but if some of that was ground,
You could get away with that.
right, if we just ask Jeff to pull out his green pencil instead of his gray one.
So that 350 there, that's like 1% of the total space, Andrew.
That's about 1.5%.
So the two parking, I'm just trying to like, that gives me a little.
So I
visual.
think the 3% is probably doable. When we get up to 6 or 7%, that's gonna be a lot more, that's gonna be a lot more difficult.
But yeah, because on this, like if you took those 4 trees that are directly to the right of where he's drawing that box.
Right.
I can
Sorry.
put it
Did I miss something?
But keep in mind that every scheme we're showing you has, 5 to 10 more parking spaces than you currently have. So
Okay.
So
Tyler
that's
also-
that's why we're not too concerned here when we're at the 2 or 3%.
Okay. It's helpful to conceptualize, thanks.
So something that we should get to you is we do have a tentative design for drainage around the library on the right-hand side of the library. We have a drainage problem coming from the roof. Yes, to the lower right-hand side of the entrance to the library. It's essentially, all foundationed off so that the runoff from the roof sits in that area there. And we've dealt with it somewhat in the crawl space underneath the library with the assumption that we would fix that when we had a more, a bigger landscape design, or engineer design. So we do have those plans. I forget who was the engineer that did that? I forget who did that. Do you remember?
This was for one.
Somebody from Breadloaf or somebody that Breadloaf had do it. I
That's
have it somewhere.
So we should probably get that to your engineer when when you're talking about, but it wouldn't seem like a very difficult fix if you're essentially changing the whole site.
Right.
All right.
The one other thing I wanted to add to this, and Jeff had mentioned kind of the job that this site layout does in terms of screening the parking from the street. This option also, from the previous option, attempts to screen the Sally Port a little bit more. It's still located in a fairly prominent location on the site, but we've rotated it 90 degrees. Conceptually, we were imagining that you could have like an extension of a wing wall here, and if the roof line was carried out in a way coupled with some plantings from Jeff, those two things might make this space feel less obvious and less of a significant prominent feature, opposed to the other option, which just generically we had it facing the street. So
Okay.
that's something that we're trying to accomplish a little bit with this as well. So then this led to the concept of A3, which is building entirely to the north as a freestanding structure,
Wow.
giving you fairly fairly blank slate to work with. The biggest downside immediately to this is that this is putting a new primary structure on your property, and that would require a PUD, which can take, I think, a minimum of 3 months, and opens this up to appeal at any time, and is a process not undoable, but not necessarily the easiest thing. The highlight of this in some ways is that you have a dedicated police entrance. The police functions are fully isolated from the town hall building, and now the town hall can take over the entire lower level of the town hall building, and that includes your select board meeting space, and then opens up the entire top floor of the town hall to more community rooms, tenant space, and really kind of maximizes your program.
How would the Sally Port work in the police station? Where's the access to that?
Good question. So we're not showing anything yet. I think on this concept, it would most likely come in from the east side.
But it could come off of the driveway and just pull right in at the back corner there. There's a lot of conversation that would have to happen if this were to be the police station. Where's the front door?
Right.
Is it facing the parking lot or is it facing the road?
Right.
And again, we know where the front door is not necessarily right where you want the sally port and the
Right.
processing room.
Yeah, if the front door is facing the street, then you have to walk all the way around from the parking lot. So like, is that a 2-story building or a 1-story building?
1 story.
That's 1 story there. But if it were 2-story,
Be smaller?
it would be smaller, less lot coverage,
Mm.
smaller building. Maybe it's a little more in keeping with the height of the buildings along the street there. And it all at the cost of an elevator. Entrance there.
John, couldn't the post office and police station be interchangeable as far as locations in the scheme or not?
It's another bureaucracy,
Mhm.
you know, and not a simple one.
But it's a good point
It's a
though,
good point.
because is the post office perhaps a better use or a better function on the street versus around the back of the building?
Yeah,
And this is going to be the first time we really talked about this as far as occupancy during construction. Let's lay out the scheme where the post office sits, where the police station is. If you do new construction for the post office, and on Jeff's note, one of the arguments for potentially making the post office where the police station is shown here is that I think all of us walking through the post office concurred that it seemed like there was less than maximized utility of some of their spaces. It seemed like there was a lot of extra square footage that they could probably function in less square footage, whereas the existing post office footprint really provides everything you could possibly need for a police station and then some additional space for mechanical equipment.
Tucked around back where you would
Right.
probably
And-
want it.
And
and the
so
Sally port could be around back.
exactly where the
loading, yeah.
loading dock is. So if that were to be the scheme, you could build the post office, move the post office out of its existing location when it's done, build the police station in the existing post office. Police station functions out of its current space until it's done. Police station moves into the post office, and then you renovate the rest of the town hall space. And the entire time, everything's able to function.
Wow, okay. This is
So-
why we hired you guys, because you come up with creative ideas.
Well, we didn't promise it was gonna be.
Very
easy tonight.
disruptive, very disruptive.
The other thing we could do, on the south side of the library, in this scheme, we could raise grade and get rid of the steps going into the library. Because we're not locked in by parking or, so.
Okay.
Relative cost, building independent building versus a addition to the town hall, it would probably drive costs some, I'm guessing. What do you guys think?
That was what we looked at earlier was, the more square footage you're building new, the more expensive it gets. I mean, we're still, no matter what, we're renovating pretty much 100% of this existing building.
Yes.
In one way or another. We're probably putting in a new elevator one way or the other. So that's not going to change much. So it really gets down to how much square footage is there. There's a few other things that come into play, but not too much. So.
But if you're comparing, I may have misheard the question though, was the square foot cost of new construction adjacent to the building versus new construction that's freestanding of the building.
Correct, but that's my question.
Oh, okay.
So you might have, there might be some additional cost because interfacing with the existing building
Could be cheaper.
would
There's-
require something.
There's economies with your air handling unit, for instance, versus an independent air handling unit, right?
Yeah,
But-
right.
Possibly.
But if you don't think it's significant, if it's 5%, 5 to 10% more versus 25% more, then there's a lot of value in this independent building and the phased construction and occupancy approach that you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
even you could renovate the police office, and then you could, the town offices could operate, albeit cramped for a period of time. There's ways to phase that, phase even the town offices piece. There's a lot to be said for that.
It's also nice that in this scheme, all of the parking is in the back of the site. And so, it's much more friendly to the street. It's much more of a traditional, development pattern for a village, to have the buildings facing the street and the parking in the back.
I love the idea of making the walkway in front of the library, like changing the grade of that, so there's not a big.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who use this back parking to park for events that are across the street at the church.
True.
The senior center is using that parking, so it would be nice to have that walkway that goes in front of the library be very direct to the road where they could make the cross to the church.
This is an option that has the most parking.
It also has the highest coverage on the library parcel, right? Or of the three.
Yeah.
The ones we've seen so
Of the
far.
ones we've seen.
Right, and again, you can see that because we've actually filled in a lot of that area in the back with
Right.
parking as we move the parking from closer to the road. Now, this, of course, is now taking the library parcel significantly over the lot coverage allowances. So I think you're gonna lose a bit of that parking that's behind the
Yeah.
library. We're gonna
Yeah,
have to.
We're about
my
1,800
yeah.
square feet over the allowable library. Just
As a
I'm
library trustee, my only concern is that it greatly limits if we ever wanted to add on to the library.
Yeah.
It pretty much precludes putting an addition on the library ever.
Well, that's already true, isn't it?
No, because there's the big picnic lawn in the back where the picnic tables are right now.
I mean, there's a good 30 or 40 feet that it could expand, but
Right, you're currently at about 30% lot coverage. You're allowed 40 right now.
Okay.
And if the changes that Jeff was mentioning is true, that it goes up to 50, then
Then
you could.
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes up to 50, then this is almost fine as it is. I mean, I think it's up to, well, this is actually at 49%,
Yeah.
according to our non-exact calculations that we've been doing, but. So but Laurie's exactly right. It does at some point limiting your options for future expansion. It does, you're kind of replacing the green space and the lawn in the back with direct access to the green, or where Jeff's got trees shown and whatnot, kind of behind the police station there, but it's all shared kind of park space.
Yep. Okay.
And again, you have to forgive us. We're looking at this as it's two different parcels, but we're thinking of it as one municipal complex here.
Yeah, well, it's the same owner. The town owns both parcels. There's complications between, the trustees are elected as well as the select board.
Right.
So that there's complications with that, but this is provocative, interesting.
Yes.
Okay, I think, and clearly, one of the things that's going to speak loudly is what's the bottom line numbers between all of these, which I'm assuming you have at least guesstimates or will.
Not tonight, we don't, but,
But
the more space you build, the more expensive it is.
I mean, we're gonna hit a wall at some point.
Understood. So, but again, this is a bigger addition, right? It's more, the blue is all new, whereas before on A2, the new was probably 2/3 of the police station, and on A1, it was 1/3 of the police station. But
yeah,
with each increase in amount of new police station you're building, you're getting additional space upstairs available for other functions.
And as described, we would have some logistical savings.
Yeah.
by juggling the different uses. I mean, if we're renovating the entire building, I mean, anything we do is going to be disruptive, but I don't know how we function, at all if we're trying to address all of the space without some kind of temporary, office space for somebody.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on how much you're adding onto the building. I mean, most projects, when it's an addition renovation, we almost always build the addition first.
Mhm.
Give you some space to move into. I mean, I bet the police could manage with just the addition on this scheme here.
Yeah.
And move out of where they are now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already twice, it's probably, that new addition is 3 times what they have already.
Yeah.
So I think that could work, and then you renovate in where they are for the town offices, and then the town has place to move. I mean, Linda's gonna have to deal with this regardless, right? Because we're not moving the town clerk.
Yeah, that's the one that doesn't move.
So in scenario A3, there's no change to the footprint of the existing building.
Correct.
We have to look at this a little bit more, but essentially, I think we should probably be taking out that exterior fire escape and putting in a legitimate enclosed stairwell.
I don't think we get away from that in any.
And I think we tell Tyler that that's undeveloped land, but it's developed because there's a fire escape on it.
Yeah, I think we should tell them that. But
Can you flash A1? I missed that at the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry. Just real briefly.
Much smaller addition for the police station.
Okay.
And therefore, the police then happens on grade, up a half a level, and then up another full floor. And there's no tenant space on the second floor.
So, yeah, probably the biggest downside with A1, Dave, is no tenant space.
Right.
So because we're throwing a lot at you, and you guys will have this and Christine isn't here, but I'm sure she would say we should have a matrix. And so we've preemptively started organizing that, and this list can expand.
Okay.
When you guys start throwing all these different pros, cons, we can expand this list into everything that
Okay.
you guys want in terms of comparative.
And we can email you what we've got going there with all the columns.
Yay,
Yeah, highlighted. I don't have that with me tonight, but
that's fine.
One brief comment, and for kind of throwing it at Lori's thoughts about the ability for the library to expand. If we have tenant space and meeting space in the town offices per A3, then there's less need to ever expand the library. Whereas if we were to go the A1 route, then the community may want to expand in the library. So it kind of begs the question, where do you want your community spaces? In the attached or part of the library, or attached or part of the,
I'm actually thinking not about community spaces as part of a library expansion. It's more stacks and children's programming space.
Yeah, I don't disagree with like the programming needs and so forth, but anyway.
Fair enough.
We could also lop off the parking lot and, save that whole green behind the library, because, this plan has 10 more spaces than you currently have. So if the current parking counts were sufficient, we could just get rid of that whole portion there. So.
Or if there was ever the great demand to add on to the library,
Yeah.
you go the other way as
Yep.
needed.
Yep.
Because the parking's valuable. There's times in town when that lot's full, but
even during the day, sometimes when, there's stuff going on in the library, stuff going on at the church and
fill it.
post office and everything, it does get pretty full back there. Would there be any possibility in the future of putting a second floor in the blue square, if we made that the post office? And then could you put a second floor on there, or make it available to put one? So you could have some meeting space or program space up there?
yes, there's
Yeah.
no doubt. A new building, if we think about it now, is relatively easy to do that with. I mean, it costs money to make that second floor ready.
But it would allow for potential future expansion.
And what is the square footage of just the blue space on that one? Is that?
We were doing somewhere between 35 and 4,500, depending on what goes there.
And what is the current square footage of the police station?
17 or something.
17.
The existing police station.
Yeah, it's less than that, I think.
I think it's sorry, it's gonna take me a second to.
I bet it's barely 1,000.
Oh, you
Wow.
think? Yeah,
Okay.
but you know, it's clearly inadequate.
Right.
The Heinsberg Police Station without the Sally Port is about 2,500. And then with the Sally Port, I mean, their Sally Port.
So right now, this is your only police station space.
Yeah.
Hold on. No, don't think I have it.
Yeah.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
Ouch.
It's a little less, so it's about 900.
Oh, really?
Good call, Dave.
Yeah.
So we need to keep going because we've got some other interesting
Okay.
ideas to
Okay.
throw in front of you.
So this exhausted, well, didn't exhaust. There's lots of variants of all of these. But then we pivoted to, okay, let's build to the south and then the southwest of the building. B1 and B2 are similar footprints. They kind of address how the police department is accessed. But these options began playing with building all the police station on one level, on grade. This option provides the public entrance off of the street, the Sally Port in the existing location of the post office loading bay. It allows for all the town offices and all the town functions to be on the lower level and expanded program for tenants up on the second floor. It does eat into the existing post office footprint, and therefore you see this top corner kind of with the black solid line for the wall instead of the gray, as that represents an addition that's square foot for square foot. It's not necessarily making the statement that this is the square footage you need for the post office. We haven't gotten into that level of programming with the post office yet, because we've been told just to kind of preliminarily assume it stays exactly where it is or goes completely. This is saying this is what the square footage is currently.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some reduced variation of this. The biggest initial issue with this is that we are showing the addition built into this kind of wedge around the vault with a common secondary stair in front of the vault that spans all the floors. That is taking place in currently undeveloped portions of that parcel, which could be problematic based on what Tyler was saying.
And all in the floodplain.
And yes. So this needs quite a bit of compensatory storage. But Kevin also said that that isn't necessarily undoable. It just needs coordination in terms of how we level this back area.
We can build in the
the,
floodplain if we build it to floodplain standards, eh?
And make up for the.
You have to make, yes, but you have to make up for any, you need to be able to store as much flood water after the building is done as you can before.
And just to be clear, the floor elevation isn't lower than it is the elevation of the slab is above the offset required. You're just building within the shadow, or not the shadow, or I guess.
So, and Jeff, did I hear you say that we could take out material by lowering the parking? Or am I
Yep.
mishearing that?
Yeah, so again, in this scheme, it pushes back towards that east property line So we're removing that hillside, which would count as compensatory storage.
Ledge back there, you know that, right?
Ledge,
Yeah, I think that hillside is pretty round.
There's,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have to explore that. Hopefully it's the crumbly ledge and not the really rock solid ledge.
I'm pretty sure it's that's ledge back there, but I don't know.
But then this scheme, really gives the library a nice outdoor space to the south. That could be kind of a, story time lawn area. Again, we could raise the grade so that we could get rid of some of that grade differential on the south side of the library that's there today.
Yes, in the wish list, there's a little covered pavilion so that they could do story time outside and still have a roof.
Yeah.
There's
So I like
plenty of
all
room
of
for
these.
that.
Can we do all of them?
Gazebo.
If you
And so
just
from
get
a,
that CDS.
Yeah, right.
from the standpoint of, I know you mentioned that developing an undeveloped portion is problematic, given sort of the grandfathering of this all, but is there, it looks like that little fun circular kid story hour area would be, that's currently parking lot, right? So
It is.
can you trade?
Yeah,
I think
that's a good question. From a stormwater standpoint, they don't usually let you do that, but from a local town planning, they might. I don't know.
Right. And I
know
think that's
people?
why Tyler was probably not necessarily sticking his stake in the ground there.
Yeah.
So again, what are the differences? What are the back and forth? What are you giving up? What are you getting? Is there a public benefit? I'm going to guess throw one other issue on the table here is the development and the construction of this is getting really close to the property line on the other side.
Yeah.
Very close to the neighbor there.
Yeah,
Is that your house, Jeff?
no, it's not. It's a nice house.
So anyway, it's something to remember here. The advantage, of course, is you're putting the addition on the side of the site that has little other value.
Yeah.
And preserving open space where, as Jeff has shown you right here, has got tremendous value.
Yeah, that's true. And it consolidates all of the police on one floor.
yeah, so this option really pushes everything to having dedicated entrances on the lowest possible story for your primary functions between the post office, police station, and town offices.
Andrew, you pop B2 on the screen.
So
because it's the
yeah,
same site plan, right?
so B2 is exactly the same site plan. This option, the public entrance to the police station is here. This felt a little bit remote from the parking, so we pivoted the program, and this red corridor right here is made to be a central spine that's indoors, but the entrance to the police station is now here, kind of within a relatively close proximity to parking for the public. The Sally Port's still in the same location. You have some of your offices facing the street, and then the secondary stairs still here, kind of providing emergency exit from the second floor. This is very similar. It's just a slightly tweaked program. All these options have similar type of things where we could tweak things here and there. To me, this one's a little bit better in terms of just how the public accesses the police station. I think, this, from our standpoint, when we first kind of dove into this, this is the first scheme that you've seen where the Sally Port is truly isolated from the site. That was kind of the first step, kind of going in this direction. And it does, as John said and Jeff said, create a lot of opportunity for your primary, most valuable piece of property. So
and you could park other police cars on the back side of that post office right there.
Yep. You would still need your load. So we kind of had this as a
Right, but to
placeholder.
the left there, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
all right, so
but
that's,
this one does certainly have some challenges, but something that we can certainly look at more if this is. So that's B1 and B2. C1 continue to prioritize getting that Sally Port in that back corner, but it said since we're developing within this lower corner close to the adjacent property in a location that's currently undeveloped, why not consider using same site plan but building up instead of out? This option really reduces the amount of addition that you're building within a floodplain while still working with this lower corner of the building. What it does is it continues off of that kind of central access corridor down to the police station. All of your town offices and select board meeting are on the half story of the town hall. The post office has an addition built off, and then the police station has an internal stair and dedicated services, your receptionist, some storage, your processing, and then the stair goes up to a second story where you have your patrol offices, a meeting room, your chief and sergeant. And then you have this what this also does, and this is the first scheme where we show this, but you're going to need to replace your current elevator. All the other options that we've shown conceptually work with the existing hoistway to do a new elevator. In this concept, we've gotten rid of the hoistway as well, recaptured the original building as part of your town offices in that area, and then the new elevator is built over here to the south of the building with this new common stair and provides a central location for all the kind of services on this kind of center corner. We've had some initial discussions with structural in terms of what this would require. It definitely, we would need to address the existing structural system at the post office. There's several different ways that could happen. There's everything from renovation up to selectively demoing certain portions of the post office to just build new because of the existing conditions of that structure. But
well, some of the committee members and public might not be aware that back corner of the post office really poorly used. It's not very efficient at all. It's used for the loading dock, and there's a loading dock area, but there's a hallway back there, and it's just not. It's an almost useless space.
I don't have that floor plan. That's also the area I don't think we've necessarily mentioned it at this meeting, but that's also the area that is actually 2 inches low, or plus or minus 2 inches lower than the rest of the slab of the post office. And that 2 inches actually pushes it below the required offset from the base flood elevation, which means that that slab needs to be raised up anyways to begin with. So there's some work there that needs to happen regardless.
Where would the loading dock be for the post office in this scenario?
It's not really shown clearly, but I would envision it just being slid over.
So that green space in front of there really wouldn't be green space.
That's probably,
we'd probably lose a few parking spaces.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just,
I mean, it could be on the far right-hand side of the new addition too.
or you could, you could go here, you could come around.
yeah, we'll just have to look at how much space the trucks need to pull up to come back.
And that's something, Jeff, that we didn't really look at was in all these cases is how do the post office trucks get in?
Right.
in and
Right
out?
now they use, I think they use pretty much all of that right-hand space to kind of
To back in.
pull up and then back in.
Right.
Do we get
and-
tractor trailers, or are they just straight trucks?
Gosh,
The one that I actually saw a site plan with one that was surprisingly long. There was an aerial photo, it's not a site plan, an aerial photo that I saw where I was like, oh, that looks like a larger truck than.
yeah, I think I've seen
Yeah,
some pretty.
they're not tractor trailers, but they're some pretty darn big box trucks.
Oh, okay, here's the one that A&R is using is, 1 second.
You picked the picture at just the right time.
Yeah,
It is pretty long, isn't it?
yeah, and I think
Yeah, so they come
they
around.
pull up like, kind of like to the end of that
Yeah.
green space and then back in, and then they just pull straight out. I mean, these are small details. We don't have to get into that right now, but,
But it would change where the cross aisles are in that parking lot.
right. Yeah, with a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, but no, just let's not go down that rabbit hole too much, but just curious.
But
Thanks.
the initial conversations with the structural engineer did not result in any clear conclusions about how simple it would be to put that addition, a second story on right there,
Mm.
and what it would mean for the existing structure when you either tore down part of the building. And, at some point you start getting into this stuff where all of a sudden now it's just as simple to tear that whole post office portion of the
Mm.
building off, at which point I guarantee that it's just become a lot more expensive.
Mhm.
So,
Just as a reminder too, we do know already that we need to, as I mentioned, raise the slab, but also infill the pipe trench around the perimeter of the building, which is
I don't know
All
if
right.
you're-
Yep.
something, so.
But that would be good, because it would, maybe we can just leave everything in it and bill it,
right,
because it should be encapsulated.
So this option right now, as we're showing it, the only addition, well, there's a second floor addition, but the only increase in footprint is the post office based off of a square foot matching of what they currently have.
Okay, and this is as opposed to B2, right? B1 rather, so, or B2. B2 had,
we're similar.
okay, so
Yeah.
and B1 and B2, that's a one-story addition?
Yes. Yeah, B1 and B2 are exactly the same footprint. They just changed the police program to allow for the entrance on B2 to be a little bit closer to the parking spaces, but it is purely, it's all on the same level.
Okay.
And then in response to this option, C1 was, rather than build out, build up in the same location,
Gotcha.
to not be
Plus-
building within the floodplain as much,
Plus the stairwell.
plus the stairwell. That's true.
Okay.
And then D1 introduces kind of a hybrid of A3 and the Bs, where we're working. This shows the concept of a full police station built to the east. This option, similar to A3, could be all one level police station, or with the increased cost of an elevator, you could go to a smaller footprint, 2 stories. But this concept really derived from Jeff pushing the idea that we're overlapping vehicle circulation for general public and then your police vehicles, which may not be the greatest thing in the world. And this introduces 2 curb cuts, one for the public, which comes in here, and the public can access the police station, the post office, or the town offices, or all of your back of house functions for the police, or your post office loading, or this maybe town employees can also park back here. But this is very much a kind of employee only, back of house functions only.
What's the white area to the right of the post office?
Yeah, so this requires some partial demo of that southernmost portion of the post office where the loading bay is, to make that drive wider.
I got you.
There are probably some options which we've discussed, but aren't necessarily initially going to just be shown here in this kind of at this level, but we certainly could look at reducing this footprint and finding a way to have things loop around to this area. But this option really derives from the desire to, what do you guys think about this concept of separating police vehicles, police cruisers, going out on a call from your person who's just driving over to the library to pick up a book for their kid, you know?
Okay, so I actually, I kind of doubt that we need more options. This is probably plenty for us to swallow. And, you know, in my understanding, if any one of these options could be tweaked in one way or another, you know, for various different reasons. So how would you recommend that we go about evaluating these? How many have we got? We got 2, 4,
7.
7.
There's 7 here, yeah.
How do we go about evaluating these? I mean, you know, something that would be very important in my decision-making process would be relative costs.
Yep.
And, you know, there's some advantages to, you know, I think at the most, we should whittle these down to 3. And there's some advantages to showing more expensive options versus less of expensive options if we don't choose the most expensive option. You know, I mean,
I'm also curious, what do you guys like?
Well, yeah. Well, Jeff and I will leave, you can talk to Andrew, then Andrew and I leave, you can talk to Jeff.
So you guys all have different
We've
favorites.
talked about all of these. I'm not hot on this particular option, but I think, I mean, at first I loved the idea of the new building. You know, just as I looked at it and I saw, oh, here's the little addition, I think that's too small.
Mhm.
I'm worried about having kind of 3 different levels or two separate floors in the existing building for the police station. On the other hand, the site plan with the addition on the south, I think is really nice on the B options. But I really worry about whether we're going to be able to make that work.
Amy, you've got a brilliant idea. What do you think that we should be doing?
No, well, I love the options, and it's really cool to think about all the different things we could do. I'm a little worried about the options with separate buildings because I feel like we just changed the conversation on the community quite a bit.
Yes, we make this, we're going to.
Yes. So the interior of the space, it needs all new mechanicals, which I don't know if you have allotted space for that yet in any of these.
Some of them are like on this one, you can see we've taken out some of the less underutilized portions of the post office part of the building and made it into mechanical space.
Yeah, so there is some, we cannot leave the mechanicals in the basement. And we're hoping to do mechanicals in such a way as to, at the very least, make it net zero ready. So which means different kinds of mechanicals. I would assume we'd probably keep the existing boilers and move them someplace else, but hopefully have some kind of,
We'll talk about that.
we will talk about that's a whole conversation.
The only other thing I was wondering is, I know, a lot of people are very visual and all of these scenarios are going to look differently, like from the outside, the exterior of the building. Yeah. So they don't have to be strict elevations, but just conceptual sort of drawings. I don't know when we get to the point of sort of starting to kind of see what that might look like.
It's coming up.
yeah.
I mean, tonight was okay, we've done
Do we
a
want
lot
a
of
whole separate
groundwork.
building?
Now we've really incorporated thinking on the site,
Mhm.
which I think has been really helpful
Yeah,
to start
it
to
is,
really
yeah.
kind of differentiate. So I was going to summarize here. There's these are divided into A, B, C, Ds, right? A's are an addition on the east, the north side.
Correct.
North side. The B's were on the south side. C was a second story. D was then on the
C is the
East
whole
side.
separate building.
right. What's that?
Wasn't C the separate?
Well, I think of that as
Yeah.
that is a separate building, A3, but
Oh, that's
the
3,
D,
sorry.
the D was really an addition, but it's because I still see that as a connected
Addition.
building.
Yeah,
So we don't have to go through the PUD.
Okay.
exercise. But I heard a couple things tonight, which, it was at A1, was a very small addition. It has Sally Port in kind of the wrong spot. I don't see anybody getting excited over the fact that we
Leases
kicked
are.
all of the tenants out of the building.
Yeah, so that's the least.
So that seems like, and I also heard some objections to, or some discomfort with the idea of a separate building there in between. So that really says if we're going to do a police station addition on that side, it's really kind of the A2 option. But that seems like one we've been talking about, and it would be really hard to throw that one totally away. I heard a lot of positive comments about the B concept.
Yeah.
Which is really just one option. The differences between B1 and B2 were really just the internal floor plan layout. I think that all those floor plans work nicely. I think there's some challenges with kind of building on that side in terms of the neighbor lot coverage, et cetera. But I'm not hearing anyone say, get rid of this as a possibility.
I'm not yet, and Karen brought up a good point about what it looks like from the street as far as, addition to the building. It's really dead space back there right now. I mean, I think it could be, to my mind, it could be improved depending on what the finishes are. Right.
Architecturally, this is actually going to be easier to deal with than the aesthetics of the one on the other side. Yeah.
Blocks the vault.
Right, it's already got the vault there, so which is just a big blank wall.
Yeah, right.
So
It hides the ugly post office addition.
Right.
That's your opinion.
Yeah, well,
So again, I think, so this is really only one option. So now we're down to two where we had five.
Yeah,
So that's real progress.
yeah.
I didn't anyone getting excited about the second floor option, and I'm nervous about that because I think there's a lot of unknowns there in terms of the structure.
That one, yeah,
Though it really reduces your,
footprint.
it really reduces the footprint if the post office fit in what was left of the yellow.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm not certain that that's going to be the case. I will just pile on here a little bit. We're trying to work with the US Postal Service right now on another small project.
I hear it's a nightmare.
Well, it's been 10 weeks and they haven't gotten back to us.
Right.
So
They, even doing this project back 25 years ago or whatever it was, really hard to get their attention on a small project.
Right.
Really
I
hard.
imagine if we do change their square footage, it will change the rent that we
It
get
could.
from them as well.
right.
Hey,
Right.
John, do you think from your kind of gut feeling, you could give each one of these, kind of like the restaurant $ rating where,
Yes.
A1 is $1 and, the next one's $2, like just to give them a.
Right. I would rather do, right, and I'm trying to get this down to 1A, 1B, and 1C option. I mean, and I can include the C, but there's a lot, that one's gonna be the least reliable numbers here because I really don't know what it means yet from a structural standpoint. And how much of the existing post office building we'd end up having to tear down.
But I would imagine that the more new construction is, more dollars, right? So even with an addition, like, is that kind of true or?
Yes. The problem we're having here is that these aren't apples to apples because, even like the difference between A1 and A2 is you end up with more tenant space.
Yes.
I don't know how do you factor that into the straight
The
dollars?
revenue, yeah.
So,
but I mean, I think if you just looked at it from pure construction and not necessarily revenue generating.
right.
Okay, so I think, what I'm hopeful for is that you have given us options to consider, and lots of them. And I feel pretty comfortable that we could narrow it down to 3. I think we've got, we had 7, we're down to, you just now eliminated 2 pretty much. So we're down to 5. I think we could come up with 3. And then at that point, I think that the dollar amounts would be helpful.
Yes, I agree.
One thing that might be useful, Jeff, I think, because I think you said you might come back with additional options or mixtures of those options. I think an important way to provide us with feedback would be to identify that there are so many variations of all of these, rather than fixate on a specific option, also providing us with the things that you like, the things that you dislike.
Yeah.
Even if let's say C1 is non-viable in your mind, if there's something that you particularly like about it, let's make sure that doesn't get lost, because there might be a way to integrate that into another option, even if it's not currently shown. So
I think we can do that. And I think soon we need to go to the select board and give them an update. But until we go through this next step, I don't think it's necessary or useful, because they'll have their own ideas. But if we can narrow it down to 3 with the pluses and minuses, I think that Andrew's talking about, we can do another iteration with you guys, and we find that enough to be able to present to the select board. Here's the, still preliminary, but these are the different pieces. Yep. Does that sound right? You think?
Another way to approach this, or one way that I've approached these kinds of things in the past, is to go through and sort of, for each of the different options, come up with like, what do we like about it? What do we don't like about it?
Yeah, that's
what do we like about it? What do we don't? For all 7 options,
okay.
Right? And I say that because of what Andrew was just saying, is that even once we are able to narrow it down, it might not be picking option, B2. It might be B2 with elements from this and elements from that. And if we can pull together more of those pros and avoid more of those cons.
Is there some kind of matrix that we could put together to do
Well, I mean,
that?
Andrew's got something started here.
But,
Yeah, Andrew, this looks like the rubric idea that Christine was actually talking about.
I'm happy to send you this Excel file so that you have
Yeah.
something to start with that you can
Yeah.
hack away at and change. And
Yeah,
I mean, from my perspective, if I'm going to try to give you some different options to start to look at prices on, I'm going to want to choose one of the ones with the A2, and then a B, and probably one with an addition to the east there. And maybe it's a smaller one and we're looping the road around behind,
yeah,
because I think there is some potential value there, and that we're not really building up against that old building, and it takes all those aesthetic issues like you were talking about, Lori, kind of out of play a little bit.
yeah.
okay,
Mm.
And it puts the police station not along the front street anymore,
yeah.
which I've heard more than once here is kind of a nice thing. So I think those are kind of 3 very different directions that you really now you're going to be trying to decide, or even to present to the select board.
Mm.
I keep going back to the B. I know there's a lot of things that are going to be challenging about that, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow that seemed to come up with what I thought was a very nice site plan.
Mm.
So I think we've gone as far as we can with this tonight. And I agree with the comments that you presented us with a lot of creative work here. And I really appreciate it. And I have complete faith that we'll be able to work our way through it in some fashion. We have so far. Okay, so, I think we've got another 15 minutes, and I think we can run through the rest of our agenda if that's
Mhm.
okay with anybody else. Anybody last comments on?
what do you want to see from us between now and the 16th in your next
Um,
meeting?
I'm not Just the materials, I think. I think we need to have a meeting without you at our next meeting to kind of hash through this, see what we have and what
Yeah.
we and that's probably, an hour and a half meeting anyways, to
Mhm.
digest all of this. And so I
Mhm.
suggest that we skip you next time.
Mm.
Okay.
I
Is
think
that okay?
similar to I think it was a couple meetings ago where we did this kind of same back and forth where you guys had a week to, it might
Mhm.
be worth it as you guys sift through this information between now and the meeting, if questions come up that
Mhm.
John, Jeff, or I can answer, or Kevin as
Mhm.
well, because we're starting to get into specifics enough that we might as well try to answer questions as they come up rather than just ignore them until we have feedback that we're like, oh, by the way.
Okay, so the way we can do this is you can funnel questions through me.
Yes.
I'm the point of contact and we can't really have a discussion on email with all of
No.
us. So, but just for open meeting law. But if people come up with questions, I can consolidate them and send them to you, Andrew and John. And see if there's any more information we need before we delve into this. And an actionable spreadsheet, this spreadsheet being a live spreadsheet that we can play with might be useful.
Yeah.
I could do that. So Jeff, I can only email you the attachments. I feel like we've had this conversation before, but
No, you can email, well, if you email them to me and Josh, that's fine. The questions from the committee need to go through me before they get to you.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll
That's
email
good.
you to the attachments that we used tonight, and then you guys can disseminate it.
Including this lot coverage.
Sure, that would be
sheet.
great.
And
Mhm.
Andrew, I'm thinking that the little summary that you did for us on the different kind of notes, we should send those on. And
That'd be great
I
too.
can hand that to
Mhm.
Josh right now, but we'll send that out electronically.
You can send it to Andrew, you can send it to me and Josh, and Josh can disseminate it to
Here's
us.
Jeff, there's. You too.
Thanks.
Kind of, these are the notes we were going from this, I just had those two copies.
Okay.
So you guys would be meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And we would
Yeah.
meet with 2 weeks after that?
Yeah. So I think
Right,
Yeah.
right in the station, but that's okay.
Well,
Andrew's got you covered.
we got a month to figure that out.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This was really, really helpful tonight.
Well, yeah, I hope, in the long run, I hope it's true. I'm not sure we're coming to a final decision.
No, this is good to have
In
the
the short
I,
run, but-
I really liked seeing the site plans with Jeff's, like the landscape, the whole,
Yeah.
looking at it as a whole piece.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is not get too far ahead of ourselves, so that we don't come up with a $20 million project and, go to the select, board and go, we really like this.
Right.
Yeah,
I think we can make progress at our next meeting, and be
Yeah.
back in touch.
Maybe a
Okay.
penny over 90 million.
Yeah, right.
Good.
don't joke about that. These numbers are outrageous. these days.
Okay, so we have a couple of other things to do. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jeff.
guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
John.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have the proposal by Diane Meyerhoff for doing our consulting. That seems
Yep.
like an easy one.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about that or any concerns?
Look great.
Okay.
No, it looked fine.
Look good.
If not, I think it would be appropriate to do a vote.
Mhm.
Now, so I would entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from Diane Meyerhoff as presented.
In a second.
I second it.
I'll second.
Well, pick one of the three. Okay,
That's fine. Amy can second. I'm writing notes.
okay, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, state your name and your vote. Okay,
Dave Healy, aye.
Amy, I.
Lori, I.
Linda, I.
Josh,
Dave,
aye.
aye.
And Jeff, I, so unanimous.
Yay.
We met earlier, Lori, Jay and I met earlier to go over library exterior options. Lori sent around a proposal. If we can decide on that tonight, we can present it to the select board. It'll be March 13th meeting. But we can present it to the select board. I think that's before our next meeting anyways.
Yep.
So if people had a chance to look at that. Okay, are there any questions or concerns about that proposal? Essentially, the proposal is to do exterior work on the library building that's deferred maintenance that we have identified previously. We do have a bid on it. And we have sufficient funds in the town center fund to do that project this summer, and the contractor could do it this summer. So it's a piece of the larger project which could be accomplished this summer that would accomplish necessary structural work and water infiltration work to one of the towers.
And I
So-
did reach out to Caitlin at the Department of, where we have a grant from the State Division of Historic Preservation. She gave me a verbal, this looks like it'll fly with the grant. She needs a couple things from us to actually put it through for approval, but she needs an insurance from the contractor and some other things, but she felt like it was appropriate for the grant that we have.
Great, we have a $14,000 grant or something like that?
Yeah.
I do have one question.
Okay,
I noticed there was a $25,000 line item for slate replacement. And it was just on the tower. There was no reference from the initial assessment about the condition of that slate. That's a lot of money for replacing a handful of slates. So because that's not touching the main roof, I believe.
No,
Lori,
it's the slate on the two towers.
And so that's, I mean, generally speaking, I know I've paid about $30 per slate to replace. $50 is like the highest I've ever seen. I did a little bit of math, and that's about 500 slate that need to be replaced. That sounds high.
I'm trying to find the,
if we were talking about the entire roof of the entire building, that number would make sense to me.
no, the entire roof is $159,000.
That was a tear off and redo.
Yep.
But they're not talking about doing that for the towers, right? They're talking about, at least the way it was written on that quote, it just said replacing broken and missing tiles.
I can check back with Alex or with Jay about that. I don't have the answer.
I mean, other than that, it's deferred maintenance. It needs to be done. I just didn't understand. There seemed to be a disconnect there for me.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a good point. So should we defer the decision on this until we get the answer to that question?
I would go along with it if everyone else is comfortable. I just didn't want to have the vote happen without at least raising that this.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm a little worried about waiting too long and then having Alex say I had to schedule something in July.
but it's a pretty, it's, you know.
It's a big question.
Half
Can we-
the project.
Yeah.
Timing wise, there's only a week between select board meetings, so if we wait, we're only going from the 13th to the 20th. So
Okay.
just
Okay.
perspective on timing.
I was
Okay.
worried about waiting into April. Okay,
Okay, so I would be comfortable about deferring that and
Okay.
getting the answer to the question.
I'll
I think-
ask Jay. And Alex is actually preparing a formal proposal for this project. And there
Mhm.
might be more information in that. Because that's one of the things that the state requires. like to have a proposal for just this chunk of work pulled out of the big proposal.
Okay, and so Lori, perhaps you and I and Jay can meet one more time.
Well, or I can just ask Jay if he has any more clarity on that.
Okay, it's a good point, Jake. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
The next
Thanks.
item is update on the library grants. Do we have any updates on the library? You know, you had mentioned, Lori, that
I sent out that document. What the Department of Libraries has said is that they want a needs assessment from all the libraries who intend to apply for either grant by the end of March. Rebecca and I will do that, and we can have people look at it on the committee if they'd like. It's very, very long. I mean, pages and pages and pages. They ask you everything you could possibly want to know about your project. Realistically, because our project is shovel ready, we have a big advantage. For the HUD, the 10 million they have is from HUD, and that has to be allocated by September of 2023. They have to have picked the projects that they're going to fund by September. And we actually have a bid.
that's
So,
good. We're in a good position to be
Right,
applying for
right.
these grants.
Right. The other, I just got an update on the other money. They're not even going to have the grant application available until the winter now, they're saying.
Okay. Yeah, so 2023 and 2024. So
Right,
what
but that has to be expended by the end of 2026.
Yeah.
that
it has to
money.
be allocated. It's our ARPA money, so it need to be allocated by the end
Yes.
of.
Yeah.
So for our ARPA committee, I think we should put this on the agenda for our next meeting as well.
Mhm.
And we could make a proposal to our ARPA committee that we want X number of dollars contingent on receiving grants for Y number of dollars or something of that nature. I think.
Right. I intend to apply for the Bruin grant again from Preservation Trust. That's up to 100,000 matching. I had a
Okay.
conversation with Jenna about why we didn't get picked last time. It was really not the application. It was more about the competitors and
Okay.
the quality or who we were up against and the needs. So she encouraged me to apply again. We talked about some ways to maybe change the application a little bit. So, but that requires $100,000 match if we got that.
So one of the things that Lori and I talked about is there are different ways to approach the ARPA committee. Our ARPA committee has been getting proposals from various different committees.
Mhm.
I expect that we will want to, for the town center building, submit a proposal for a significant amount, whatever it might be. The library trustees is a separate committee. And what I talked with Lori about, and Amy, I don't know if she talked with you, is that it might be better coming from the library trustees to the ARPA committee for X number of dollars for deferred maintenance to the library. So it's coming from a different source.
Yep.
So I think, it would be, you could trial run it past us. But I think it might be better received from the ARPA committee if it came from the trustees.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the trustees' intention, was to do it from the trustees.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
So the only.
Yeah, no, I think we were going to talk about it with this committee, but hoped that we were going to apply or propose money on our own.
That's great. That's great. So the only other thing on our agenda is to approve meeting minutes from 2 meetings, right, Lori?
Right. This February 2nd and February 16th.
So let's do them one at a time. Have people had a chance to look at them or trust Lori?
Last meetings were very short because there wasn't a quorum, so we couldn't vote on anything.
Let's do them separately. So how about a motion on, which one, Lori,
February 2nd.
okay, February 2nd? So do I hear a motion?
I moved to accept the February 2nd. So moved.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Jake seconds it.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, state your name and your vote.
Linda, I.
Lori, I.
Josh, I.
Amy, I.
Okay.
Dave, are you there? Well, Jeff, let's call it a day.
Okay.
And a motion for the February 16 minutes?
Move to approve the February 16 minutes. It's Josh.
Josh.
Second
Okay.
that.
Jake seconds it. Any discussion? Okay, state your name and your vote.
Jake,
Lori.
I.
Lori, I.
Amy, I.
Linda, I.
Josh, I.
And Jeff, I.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank
Hey,
you,
I
Lori.
think we're right there at 8:30.
Hey. I wasn't sure we'd make it.
I like doing a crisp meeting. Okay, if there's nothing else to discuss tonight, I think, Laura, you've got some agenda items for our next meeting already.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing you all at the information meeting on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock for our
Is that a Zoom meeting? Is that a
town meeting. By the way, town meeting is Monday night, starting at 6 o'clock. And that's when we will be voting on the budget with the people who were there, which is the first time we've ever done it that way.
Monday night.
Monday night.
People are so confused. I've had to
Here,
explain it to
We'll
people.
be up at the middle school.
Okay.
And then Tuesday is Australian ballot on all other items in the election.
Yeah.
You won't be able to vote on Monday night for the election or the Australian ballot items.
So is the vote just for school budget, or I'm sorry, just for the town budget
budget.
on Monday night?
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
Yep.
And any other stuff from the floor that people bring up.
yeah, there can be resolutions from the floor, non-binding resolutions from the floor.
Okay.
Okay, okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.